Okay, here we go. All right, so last week we finished off with, you're not dreaming, mommy. We got real chickens, and right, they're going to cook those up and everything. So now, um, and then dad and one of the other younger foxes continue to dig. So, chapter 12, Badger. Mr. Fox and the three remaining small foxes dug fast and straight. They were all too excited now to feel tired or hungry. They knew they were going to have a whacking great feast before long, and the fact that it was none other than Bogus's chickens they were going to eat made them gurgle with laughter every time they thought of it. It was lovely to realize that while the fat farmer was sitting up there on the hill waiting for them to starve, he was also giving them their dinner without knowing it. Keep digging, said Mr. Fox. It's not much further. Oh, wait. Is there a picture? Yeah. So they're continuing to dig. All of a sudden, a deep voice above their head said, "Who goes there?" The foxes jumped. They looked up quickly and they saw, peeking through a small hole in the roof of the tunnel, a long, black, pointed, furry face. "Badger!" cried Mr. Fox. "Foxy!" cried Badger. "My goodness me, I'm glad I found someone at last. I've been digging around in circles for 3 days and nights, and I haven't foggiest idea where I am." Badger made the hole in the ceiling bigger and dropped down beside the foxes. A small badger, his son, dropped down beside him. "Haven't you heard what's happening up on the hill?" Badger said excitedly. "It's chaos. Half of the woods has disappeared, and there are men with guns all over the place, all over the countryside. None of us can get out, even at night. We're all starving to death." "Who is we?" asked Mr. Fox. "All of us diggers. That's me and Mole and Rabbit and all our wives and children. Even Weasel, who can usually sneak out of the tightest spots, excuse me, is now hiding down my hole with Mrs. Weasel and 6 kids. What on earth are we going to do, Foxy? I think we're finished." Mr. Fox looked at his 3 children and he smiled. The children smiled back at him, sharing his secret. "My dear old Badger," he said, "this mess you're in is all my fault." "I know it's your fault," said Badger furiously. "And the farmers are not going to give up until they've got us. Unfortunately, that means us as well. It means everyone on the hill." Badger sat down and put a paw around his small son. "We're done for," he said. "We're done for," he said softly. "My poor wife up there is so weak, she can't dig another yard." "Nor can mine," said Mr. Fox. "And yet, at this very minute, she is preparing for me and my children the most delicious feast of plump, juicy chickens." "Stop!" cried Badger. "Don't tease me. I can't take it." "It's true," cried the small foxes. "Dad's not teasing. We got chickens galore." "And because everything is entirely my fault," said Mr. Fox, "I invite you to share the feast. I invite everyone to share it. You and Mole and Rabbit and Weasel and all your wives and children. There'll be plenty to go around, I can assure you." "You mean it?" cried Badger. "You really mean it?" Mr. Fox pushed his face close to Badger's and whispered darkly, "Do you know where we've just been?" "Where?" "Right inside Bogus's chicken house number 1. "1? No." "Yes, but that is nothing to where we are going now. You have come just at the right moment, my dear Badger. You can help us dig. And in the meanwhile, your small son can run back to Mrs. Badger and all the others and spread the good news. Mr. Fox turned to the small badger and said, "Tell them they are invited to a fox's feast. Then bring them all down here and follow this tunnel back until you find my home." "Yes, Mr. Fox," said the small badger. "Yes, sir, right away, sir. Oh, thank you, sir." And he scrambled quickly back through the hole in the roof to the tunnel and disappeared. Chapter 13, Bunsy's Giant Storehouse. "My dear Mr. Fox, Foxy," cried Badger, "what in the world has happened to your tail?" "Don't talk about it, please," said Mr. Fox. "It's a painful subject." They were digging the new tunnel. They dug on in silence. Badger was a great digger, and the tunnel went forward at a terrific pace now. Excuse me, now that he was lending a paw. Soon they were crouching underneath yet another wooden floor. Mr. Fox grinned slyly, showing sharp white teeth. "If I'm not mistaken, my dear Badger," he said, "we are now underneath the farm which belongs to that nasty little pot-bellied dwarf, Bunsy. We are, in fact, directly underneath the most interesting part of the farm." "Ducks and geese," cried the small foxes, licking their lips. "Juicy, tender ducks and big fat geese." "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "But how in the world can you know where they are?" asked Badger. Mr. Fox grinned again, showing even more white teeth. "Look," he said, "I know my way around these farms blindfolded. For me, it's just as easy below ground as it is above ground." He reached high and pushed up one wooden floorboard, then another. He poked his head through the gap. "Yes," he shouted, jumping up into the room above. "I've done it again. I've hit it smack on the nose, right in the bullseye. Come and look." Quickly, Badger and the three small foxes scrambled up after him. They stopped and stared. They stood and gaped. They were so overwhelmed they couldn't speak. For what they now saw was a kind of fox's dream, a badger's dream, a paradise for hungry animals. "This, my dear old Badger," proclaimed Mr. Fox, "is Bunsy's mighty storehouse. All of his finest stuff is stored in here before he sends it off to market. Against all the four walls of the great room, stacked in cupboards and piled upon shelves reaching from the floor to the ceiling, were thousands and thousands of the finest and fattest ducks and geese, plucked and ready for roasting. And up above, dangling from the rafters, there must have been at least 100 smoked hams and 50 sides of bacon. "Just feast your eyes on that," cried Mr. Fox, standing up and down. "What do you think of it, eh? Pretty good grub." Suddenly, as though springs had been released in their legs, the three hungry small foxes and the ravishingly hungry badger sprang forward to grab the luscious food. "Stop!" ordered Mr. Fox. "This is my party, so I shall do the choosing." The others fell back, licking their chops. Mr. Fox began prowling around the storehouse, examining the glorious display with an expert eye. A thread of saliva slid down one side of his jaw and hung suspended in midair and then snapped. We mustn't overdo it, he said. Mustn't give the game away. Mustn't let them know what we've been up to. We must be neat and tidy and take just a few of the choicest morsels. So, to start with, we shall have 4 plump young ducks. He took them from the shell. Ooh, how lovely and fat they are. No wonder Bunsey gets a special price for them in the market. All right, Badger, lend me a hand to get them down. Your children can help as well. There we go. Goodness me, look how your mouths are watering. And now, I think we had better have a few geese. 3 will be quite enough. We'll take the biggest. Oh my, you'll never see finer geese than these in a king's kitchen. Gently does it. That's the way. And what a couple of nice smoked hams. I adore smoked ham, don't you, Badger? Fetch me that step ladder, will you please? Mr. Fox climbed up the ladder and handed down 3 magnificent hams. And do you like bacon, Badger? I'm mad about bacon, said Badger, dancing with excitement. Let's have a side of bacon, that big one up there. And carrots, Dad, said the smallest 3 foxes. We must take some of those carrots. Don't be a twerp, said Mr. Fox. You know we never eat things like that. It's not for us, Dad, it's for the rabbits. They only eat vegetables. Oh my goodness me, you're right, cried Mr. Fox. What a thoughtful little fellow you are. Take 10 bunches of carrots. Soon all this lovely loot was lying in a neat heap upon the floor. The small foxes crouched close, their noses twitching, their eyes shining like stars. And now, said Mr. Fox, we shall have to borrow from our friend Bunsey 2 of those useful push carts over in the corner. He and Badger fetched the push carts, and the ducks and geese and hams and bacon were loaded on them. Quickly, the carts were lowered through the hole in the floor. The animals slid down after them. Back in the tunnel, Mr. Fox again pulled the floorboards very carefully into place so that no one could see they had been moved. My darlings, he said, pointing to 2 of the 3 small foxes, take a cart and run back as fast as you can to your mother. Give her my love and tell her we are having guests for dinner. The badgers, the moles, the rabbits, and the weasels. Tell her it must be a truly great feast. And tell her the rest of us will be home as soon as we're done with one more little job. Yes, Dad, right away, Dad, they answered, and they grabbed a trolley each and went rushing off down the tunnel. Chapter 14, Badger has doubts. Just one more visit, cried Mr. Fox. And I bet I'll know where that'll be. Said the only small fox left. He was the smallest fox of them all. Where? Said Badger. Well, said the smallest fox, we've been to Bogus and we've been to Bunsey, but we haven't been to Bean. It must be Bean. You're right, said Mr. Fox, but what you don't know is which part of Bean's place we're about to visit. Which? They said, both together. Aha, said Mr. Fox, you just wait and see. They were digging as they talked. The tunnel was going forward fast. Suddenly, Badger said, doesn't this worry you just a tiny bit, Foxy? Worry me? Said Mr. Fox. What? Oh, this stealing. Mr. Fox stopped digging and stared at Badger as though he had gone completely dotty. My dear old furry frump, he said, do you know anyone in the whole world who wouldn't swipe a few chickens for his children that were starving to death? There was a short silence while Badger thought deeply about this. You are far too respectable, said Mr. Fox. There's nothing wrong with being respectable, Badger said. Look, said Mr. Fox, Bogus and Bunsey and Bean are out to kill us. You realize that, I hope. Look, I do, Foxy. I do indeed, said the gentle Badger. But we're not going to stoop to their level. We don't want to kill them. I should hope not, indeed, said Badger. We wouldn't dream of it, said Mr. Fox. We shall simply take a little food here and there to keep us and our families alive, right? Well, suppose we'll have to, said Badger. If they want to be horrible, let them, said Mr. Fox. We down here are decent, peace-loving people. Badger laid his head on one side and smiled at Mr. Fox. Foxy said, I love you. 5 minutes later, Badger's front paws hit against something flat and hard. What on earth is this? He said. It looks like a solid stone wall. He and Mr. Fox scraped away the soil. It was a wall, but it was built of bricks, not stones. The wall was right in front of them, blocking their way. Now, who in the world would build a wall under the ground, said Badger. Very simple, said Mr. Fox. It's the wall of an underground room, and if I am not mistaken, it is exactly what I'm looking for. Chapter 15, Bean's Secret Cider Cellar. Mr. Fox examined the wall carefully. He saw that the cement between the bricks was old and crumbly, so he loosened the brick without much trouble and pulled it away. Suddenly, out from the hole where the brick had been, there popped a small, sharp face with whiskers. Go away, it snapped. You can't come in here, it's private. Good Lord, said Badger, it's Rat. You saucy beast, said Mr. Fox. I should have guessed we'd find you down here somewhere. Go away, shrieked Rat. Go on, beat it. This is my private pitch. Shut up, said Mr. Fox. I will not shut up, shrieked Rat. This is my place. I got here first. Mr. Fox gave a brilliant smile, flashing his white teeth. My dear Rat, he said softly, I am a hungry fellow, and if you don't hop it quickly, I shall eat you up in one gulp. That did it. Rat popped back fast out of sight. Mr. Fox laughed and began pulling more bricks out of the wall. When he had made a biggish hole, he crept through it. Badger and the smallest fox followed him. They found themselves in a vast, damp, gloomy cellar. This is it, cried Mr. Fox. This is what, said Badger. This place is empty. Where are the turkeys? Asked the smallest fox, staring into the gloom. I thought Bean was a turkey man. He is a turkey man, said Mr. Fox. But we're not after turkeys now. We got plenty of food. Excuse me. Then what do we need, Dad? Take a good look around, said Mr. Fox. Don't you see anything that interests you? Badger and the smallest fox peered into the half-darkness. As their eyes became accustomed to the gloom, they began to see what looked like a whole lot of big glass jars standing upon shelves around the walls. They went closer. They were jars. There were hundreds of them, and upon each one was written the word cider. The smallest fox leaped high in the air. Oh, Dad, he cried out. Look what we found. It's cider. Exactly, said Mr. Fox. Tremendous, shouted Badger. Bean's secret cider cellar, said Mr. Fox. But go carefully, my dears. Don't make a noise. This cellar is right beneath the farmhouse itself. Cider, said Badger, is especially good for badgers. We take it as medicine. 1 large glass 3 times a day with meals and 1 at bedtime. It'll make the feast into a banquet, said Mr. Fox. While they were talking, the smallest fox had sneaked a jar off the shelf and had taken a gulp. Wow, he gasped. Wowee! You must understand, this was not the ordinary weak, fizzy cider one buys in a store. It was the real stuff. Home-brewed, fiery liquor that burned in your throat and boiled in your stomach. Ah, gasped the smallest fox. This is some cider. That's quite enough of that, said Mr. Fox, grabbing the jar and putting it to his own lips. He took a tremendous gulp. It's miraculous, he whispered, fighting for breath. It's fabulous. It's beautiful. It's my turn, said Badger, taking the jar and tilting his head well back. The cider gurgled and bubbled down his throat. It's like melted gold, he gasped. Oh, Foxy, it's like drinking sunbeams and rainbows. You're poaching, said Rat. Put that down at once. There'll be none left for me. Rat was perched upon the highest shelf in the cellar, peering out from behind a huge jar. There was a small rubber tube inserted in the neck of the jar, and Rat was using this tube to suck out his cider. You're drunk, said Mr. Fox. Mind your own business, shrieked Rat. And if you great clumsy brutes come messing in here, we'll all get caught. Get out and leave me to sip my cider in peace. At that moment, they heard a woman's voice calling out in the house above them. Hurry up and get that cider, Mabel, the voice called. You know, Mr. Bean doesn't like to be kept waiting, especially when he's been out all night in a tent. The animals froze. They stayed absolutely still. Their ears pricked, their bodies tense. Then they heard the sound of the door being opened. The door was at the top of a flight of stone steps leading down from the house to the cellar. And now someone was starting to come down those steps. And that's where we're going to end, friends.
Oh my goodness.
What's going to happen?
Coat hangers. The worst.
I know. I love them, though, at the same time. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming. I love that you come to listen.
Yep, it was so much fun. Thank you so much, Miss Sally.
Oh, you're welcome. I just love it. And thank you, everybody. And I miss you. I hope everybody had a nice weekend.